the Rambam had explained that the mitzvah is vidui. However, the vidui only has value if you do tshuva. If you have the remorse and the commitment, then the vidui has value. But the mitzvah, Rambam says, is the confession. A confession which is predicated on when one has in his heart the remorse and the commitment not to go back there. But the Rambam cites sources at every level that one needs vidui. He starts off, aseh lo saseh, whether it's a positive, negative commandment. Then he goes and he speaks specifically about applications of what it is. Whether you bring a korban, whether you put a person's put to death, or he receives lashes. Again, the Torah says you need vidui. Or when a person injures another person, or damages another person, and makes full payment. Even there, one needs vidui. So the Torah in each one of the cases has to say again, you need vidui A, again, vidui B, and vidui C. I wouldn't learn one from the other. That one has to verbalize and express what's in your heart. So we explained why. Because we explained that person doesn't say Kriya Shema, which is a mitzvah say. A person eats not kosher, does tshuva. The tshuva is only what? And the person's not getting malchus. He's not getting lashes. So there we say, definitely, you would say you need vidui. Because you have to somehow actualize your feelings, so minimally with words. But if a person is already bringing a korban, which we explained according to Rambam, the mindset is that the korban, when you bring the korban, it's in the place of the person. You're supposed to have in mind as if, in truth, without the midas harachmim, we've mentioned many times, the appellation by korban is always korban lashem. Lashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei midas harachmim. We're only able to bring a korban within the context of rachmim. If not for rachmim, you're not able to bring a korban. Hashem is willing to take the korban in the place of the person, but in truth, regarding the liability, you should be the one to be killed, slaughtered, your blood sprinkled and burnt. Hashem is willing to take the animal in your place. But you're doing an action, you think that may be enough. The answer is no. The action is not, it has to be predicated on vidui. And if you don't do tshuva with vidui, it's called zevach b'sham to'eva. It's an abomination of a Russia, and it's not acceptable. So we spoke of what about a person who's being put to death? And the Mishnah says in Sanhedrin that kol mubsin, whoever's put to death has to be predicated on vidui. So if a person's already giving his life, you'd say, even if a person doesn't verbalize his feelings, maybe that's enough. No, even there, one has to say vidui before the person is put to death. What about mazik or chovel, where you're paying restitution? So there you're restoring the person. So when you restore the person, you would say, since it's full restoration, it's restitution, maybe one wouldn't need vidui. Again, there's a pasuk says no, even there where you make the person whole and you restore the person, even there you need vidui. Therefore, at each juncture, each application or degree of transgression, one has to have vidui. That's what the Torah in each one has to say. A needs vidui, B needs vidui, C and D. Every one of them needs oral confession. That's what we explain. But by Chovel, he says something interesting. We always say, "What yaset tshuva v'yisvader," and what is vidui, charota, and Kabbalah. The Rambam's words are, "Ul'olam eni chozel l'davar zeh." He says, "Harei nichamti uboshti b'masai." I have remorse and I'm ashamed for my actions. Ul'olam eni chozel l'davar zeh. I will not go back there, not repeat it. Okay? When he speaks about chovel, you injure another person or you damage a person. Take a look. Chovel b'chavero v'mazik mamolo. Although he compensated him financially for what he owes him, he has no kapara unless he's done vidui. The Yoshiv Melasus Kozel Olam. By the others, the Rambam says, Achi Svader. Right? By the others. What originally says vidui is, and when he speaks about Bal Chatos, he says, he doesn't say, he doesn't say again, repeat, and not to go back there ever again. Mrs. Bezdin, yeah. Doesn't repeat again, not to go back there again. When he speaks about Mazik and Chovel, he says again, what does he have to repeat? By the others, the first time he speaks about what is the boilerplate of Vidui, I'm not going back there. First time he says, he said it. He's giving us what the verbiage for Vidui is. But the others, he says, because he already gave me the verbiage. When he comes to Chovel and Mazik, he says, although you compensated him, nevertheless, he must be misvade, Yoshuv Lasuk Sel Olam. The others, he says, Achi Yasachuv Yisvader. By here he says, Achi Yisvader V'Yoshuv Malasus Kov. He mentions Vidu before Yoshuv. When it comes over here, when in terms of compensating the person financially, he mentions Vidu before Yoshuv Malasus Kozel Olam. Why does he invert the order? That's number one. And secondly, he has to mention again the Olam, not to go back there ever again. He said, Achis, Yasa. You understand what's bothering me? Ernie. By the others, he says, Ache, Yasa Chuba, Yisvader. That's the order. You do Chuba, Yisvader. And he doesn't, when he opened the statement, he explained what Vidi was, he doesn't have to say again, yeah, Yosh Lasas El Olam, and I will not do it again. Yasachuvi, his father, he already told us what Vidu is. When he speaks about restitution, compensating a person, he says, Ein Miska Achi Yisvader. He doesn't say Achi Yosachuva the Yisvader. Doesn't say that. But he says, Achi Yisvader, the Yoshim Lasas Kazel Olam. And you make a commitment not to do it again. He doesn't say Achi Yoshu Yisvader. But the others, he said, first you do tshuva, and then you say vidui. Yoshu Yisvader. Here he says Yisvader v'Yoshu Malasus Kozel Olam. Okay. So I think when I compensate you, when I pay you for an act of restitution, it's synonymous with what I'm saying. I'm not going to. I'm making good. I'm Yosha. That's tshuva. Making you whole is tshuva. I stole from you. I damaged you. I make you whole. That's synonymous with tshuva. So maybe it's enough. Yisvader. Just to say, I'm sorry. I will not do it again. You don't have to necessarily internalize the feelings, because giving it back, that's synonymous with the feelings. The Rambam says no. Achi Yisvader. You have to say the vidui. It's understood, but it's not enough. You have to reiterate Yoshuv Lasas B'Zel Olam. Like sometimes I ask the question is a lot better than the answer. What I'm saying now doesn't suffice for the question. I've always had this difficult. And what I'm saying now doesn't really make it any better. The question is still difficult. I have a question. Okay. Let's go to halacha base. Part of the Avodas Yom Kippurim was the Kohen Gadol. The Mishnah tells us, based on the Posuk, he has to take 2 goats of identical value, the same height, they look almost identical, and he draws lots. One lot says Lashem, the other lot says Lazozim. One lot says it's brought Lashem, it's brought as a korban, and the other lot says Lazozim. It's going to be taken out to the desert and thrown down a mountain by a designated person, and it's by the time it reaches the bottom of the mountain, it's a jagged mountain, the animal is dismembered. Okay? And he draws the lots, and whichever lot says Lashem, let's say he has one goat to the right, one to the left, he takes the one that says Lashem, he puts it on the animal. Lashem, let's say it's his right hand, he puts it on the right animal, on the right side. If the one that comes up says Lashem is in his left hand, he puts Lashem on the goat to his left. And the other one, he puts it on that goat that says Lazozel, means to be thrown down the mountainside, the jagged mountain. The reason why it's called Azozel, Az means fierce. The mountain is so jagged that by the time the animal reaches the bottom of the mountain, it just tumbles down the mountain. It just gets torn apart by the being rolling over the rocks, the sharp rocks. Now, what about if he would want to normally when you consecrate something, how do you consecrate something? You verbally say it should be a chatos, it should be an olah, it should be a shlomim. That's the way it's done. There's exersa kosuv that avodas yom kippurim, it has to be done through the lottery. When he puts that lot on the animal and he says Lashem, it's Lashem. But if he wouldn't go through the lottery process, choosing which one should be, it's not the korban, it's not lazozin. Exersa kosuv. So basically, who's the one who's really bringing about the consecration? Hashem is designating which one is to be brought as a korban, which one should go down the mountainside. That's what it is. Okay? The famous Rambam, because it has relevance to this, the Rambam explains, the Torah tells us, and the Mishnah really elucidates it, that the person who's designated to take the animal lazozel, now what does the sor lazozel, what does it atone for? It atones for all the sins of Klal Yisrael, all the sins, whether it's an aseh, a los aseh, carries the death penalty, person wasn't warned. So he has no liability, death penalty, kores, it atones for everything. We'll see in a moment in the Rambam. So all the sins of Klal Yisrael are on that animal. Because that animal carries all the sins of Klal Yisrael. The person who takes that animal to the mountain, there's machlokas tanoim in Mishnah, when does it become contaminated? The moment he walks out of Yerushalayim, or when he throws it down the mountainside. Now, what's the cause of the contamination? Because since all the sins of Klal Yisrael are on that animal, what is the basis for all impurity? All impurity, spiritual impurity is sin. That's where it emanates from. So because it's so heavily laden with sin, it's like spiritual infectious waste, and he's exposed to it, therefore he becomes contaminated. It's cited in Svarim that the person who took this animal into the desert to throw it down the mountainside, he did not live out the year. It's because he's exposed to such level of impurity, he cannot survive it. And he doesn't make it through the year. And the person who took it knew that would be, but that's his service for Klal Yisrael. As long as Shimon HaTzadik was alive, they would have a crimson cloth in the Azorah, in the sanctuary. And miraculously, if the Klal Yisrael would be atoned for their sins, the moment that goat was thrown down the mountainside, miraculously, that crimson cloth would turn white, which was an indication of forgiveness. Red is an indication of sin. After Shimon HaTzadik passed away, it no longer happened. It was really the beginning of the end. Klal Yisrael were not forgiven. And things became very complicated after Shimon HaTzadik. This is during Bayis Sheni, okay? So this is the Sor LaZozeh. Sor HaMishtaleach, the goat that was sent off. Lefishu kaporo al kol Yisrael. That animal represents is an atonement for all Klal Yisrael. Kohen Gadol misvada olov al loshen Klal Yisrael. So who says the confession? We say sin without confession, there's no atonement. So because this is a communal korban that carries the sin of every Jew, so therefore the Kohen, and for atonement, one needs vidui. You need confession. So who is the representative of Klal Yisrael to say vidui? The Kohen Gadol. So the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, he says vidui on behalf of Klal Yisrael. Shenema visva hisvadu olav eskol avonos b'nei Yisrael. He confesses all the sins of b'nei Yisrael. Now we speak about a mitzvah shebegufo. Every one of us has an obligation to wear tefillin. If one designates an agent to put on tefillin on his behalf, could you delegate tefillin? You can't delegate tefillin. Because the Torah says every person must wear tefillin on his arm. That's called mitzvah shebegufo. It's related directly to the person himself. Everyone has an obligation to eat a kazayis matzah. You appoint a shliach, an agent, to eat matzah on your behalf. It's not something which is, you cannot delegate it. You must eat the matzah yourself. Vidui, could one make a shliach to say vidui on his behalf? For whatever, he's not able to articulate it. And he's somebody who's able to say it better than he could. He says, you say it on my behalf. It's not valid. You have to, the person himself has to be the one to verbalize his feelings. Because this is your sin, you have to address your sin. The Sola Zozel, which is Klal Yisrael, and since the Kohen Gadol represents and is designated by Hashem as the representative Klal Yisrael, he's able to say vidui on behalf of every Jew. Because this is with the context of what a communal korban, which atones for every individual. But for a personal, anything on a personal level, other than this korban, because this korban represents Klal Yisrael, the Kohen Gadol being the one who represents Klal Yisrael, that's why he's qualified to say the vidui on behalf of Klal Yisrael. Any other context, you have to say the vidui yourself. You cannot. It's not to be delegated.